Revolution. Radio. The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
You're back with Dave and Mackie's Shiny Side Out on Revolution.radio, on the #1 listener-supported talk radio on the net. So push the donate button. Yes, just push the donate button, or get yourself some great merch from the station's website. T-shirt, a mug, or anything like. And I ask you to do one thing for me, and that is to donate to the station. We don't get paid for it. It's all free. And, if you can help out, because the servers don't pay for themselves, it only runs from listener support. That's why we're #1. We're halfway through show number 567, 760, and 500. Mecky would say if he were here, he apologizes. He says he will be with us in the coming shows, so stay tuned for Mecky's return. Life happens, plans happen, life gets in the way. It's probably the best way to put it. This is a show arc of religiosity. This is part 7. It looks like it'll be the final part, and I'm looking forward to getting through this. Sadly, Mecky's not with us again, but he puts together the show notes, and it was one of the topics that he really wanted to talk about. So, but I've got it. I do have to conclude it, and we'll be talking about something new or doing a roundup of the topic next week. So do stay tuned for that. Anyway, thank you very much for listening, and thanks for inviting us into your lives. Do tell others about it, both Shiny Side Out on Revolution.radio. It's important to spread the word. And thanks Amiga Legos in the chat room, where you can chat to me while I'm on air. And if you have a great thing to mention, it's maybe topical to what we're talking about, do post it in there and talk to us. You can troll us if you really want to make you hire on as a mercenary in Ukraine. No, and Mecky's not in my basement, although it rubs its lotion on its skin, is one of my jokes there. And I forget the movie. If someone can tell me what movie that's from, that'd be great. All right, so talk about religiosity, and I'm going to put on, I've got religion slide to throw up. This was designed by Simon E. Davies, and it is totally the history of all the religions according to him. I'm presuming it's copyrighted as designed by him, and I did not delete that. This is version 2 of The Evolutionary Tree of Religion, Faith, Myths, and Mysticism. It's very accurate. Now, we've not derived our info from it, but rather found that what we were looking at matched in context to what this displays, and it's very easily read. So it's important that that's shown on the screen, so if we talk about something, you can find it there and index it, and you can see what we're talking about. It's a really good tree. All right, viruses of the mind. In his book, this isn't Simon E. Davies, this is Richard Dawkins. In his 1976 book, The Selfish Gene, Richard Dawkins coined the term memes to describe informational units that can be transmitted culturally, analogous to regular genes. He later used this concept in the essay Viruses of the Mind to explain the persistence of religious ideas in human culture. Response to the viruses of the mind criticism. Religious and non-religious people are both critical of Dawkins' meme theory. Some have criticized the idea that God and faith are viruses of the mind, suggesting that it far removed from evidence and data that it is unreasonable to extract certain behaviours solely through religious means. Alistair McGraw has responded by arguing that memes have no place in serious scientific reflection, or that religious ideas function the way Dawkins claims. Mental illness or delusion. See also neuroscience of religion, psychology of religion, and religion and mental illness, and religion and schizophrenia. Sam Harris compares religion to a mental illness, saying that it allows otherwise normal human beings to reap the fruits of madness and consider them holy. According to a retrospective study by I'll start again. I'll fix it in post. According to a retrospective study of Abraham, Moses, Jesus Christ, and the Apostle Paul, they may have had psychotic disorders that contributed inspirations for their revelations. They conclude that people with such disorders have had a monumental influence on civilization. Psychological studies into the phenomenon of mysticism link disturbing aspects of certain mystics' experiences to childhood abuse. Clifford A. Pickover found evidence which suggests that temporal lobe epilepsy may be linked to a variety of so-called spiritual or otherworldly experiences, such as spiritual possessions, which occur as a result of altered electrical activity in the brain. Carl Sagan, in his book, The Demon-Haunted World, Science as a Candle in the Dark, presented his beliefs that the miraculous sightings of religious figures and modern sightings of UFOs were all caused by the same mental disorder. Valayanur S. Ramachandran suggests it's possible that many great religious leaders had temporal lobe seizures, and this predisposes them to having visions, having mystical experiences. Michael Persinger artificially stimulated the temporal lobes of the brain with a magnetic field by using a device which he nicknamed the God Helmet, and he was able to artificially induce religious experiences along with near-death experiences and ghost sightings. According to John Bradshaw, some forms of temporal lobe tumours or epilepsy are associated with extreme religiosity, and his recent brain imaging of religious subjects praying or meditating show identical activity in the respective human section of the brain, which Ramachandran calls God spots, not God sports. That would be completely different. In fact, I'd watch that television show if it was on. Psilocybin from mushrooms affects Psilocybin from mushrooms affect regions of the brain, including the serotonergic, that'll do, system, which generating a sense of strong religious meaning unity, and ecstasy, certain physical rituals may generate similar feelings. That's a real big stretch. In his book, Why People Believe Weird Things, Michael Shermer theorizes that emerging mankind imposed made-up explanations and bizarre rituals for natural phenomena which they did not and could not understand. This theory is similar to the arguments which Daniel Dennett wrote in However. Shermer's argument goes further by stating that the peculiar and at times the frightening rituals of religion are but one of many forms of strange customs that survive to this day. Immature stage of societal development. Philosopher Auguste Comte posited that many societal constructs pass through 3 stages, and that religion corresponds to the 2 earlier or more primitive stages by stating, from the study of the development of human intelligence in all directions and through all times, the discovery arises of a great fundamental law, to which it is necessarily subjective, and which has a solid foundation of proof, both in the facts of our organization and in our historical experience. The law is this, that each of our leading conceptions, each branch of our knowledge, passes successfully through 3 different theoretical conditions: the theological or fictitious, the metaphysical or abstract, and the scientific or positive. Wow. Response to criticism. In his book, Is Religion Dangerous?, Keith Ward notes that not all false opinions are delusions, and that the belief in God is different, as many great minds and people who live ordinary lives and believe in God are not irrational people. Hyper-religiosity, or even intensely professed atheism, can emerge from emotional disturbances involving temporal lobe epilepsy. I think he might have answered his own question. So, in a nutshell, sadly that's come to the end of the text, but in a nutshell, this argument that we have, as a society, first without any knowledge, decided upon the causality. We created gods that did things in our realm, gods we couldn't see, gods that we had to appease in order to have positive outcomes, i.e. throw more virgins, I'm only kidding, but throw more virgins into the volcano. Or we need to burn effigies of our God in order for the crops to grow properly. For instance, we have to do something, we have to an act in which we perform to appease a God to make our outcomes favorable. That's a really interesting concept, and one where we know nothing of the God themselves. It is presumed through usually a shaman or someone who has a what's the word I'm looking for? Enlightened conversation with the God, real or not real, or perceived or fictitious. Regardless, is that a way of silencing the people? Was it because we all sinned? Was it because we we hadn't been doing this thing that we used to do. And maybe if we all do it, we all have buy-in, we all do this thing, and maybe we can be one again. We can all work towards a common goal. Once again, common enemy thought. Common enemy thought is interesting, but is it always the answer? So that's for me is the first, I mean, that's probably an academic view. But if we were starting from scratch this time around, like the monkeys on the ladder who's put, they experimented, you put the bananas on the top of the ladder and you hose the monkey that touches the banana first and like really profusely hose them, right? And then what is said to happen next is all the monkeys are replaced except for a monkey who saw it. So all the monkeys are replaced. Only one monkey remains from that original group. Now they can't talk to each other. So what happens when an unsuspecting monkey who's not seen the original experiment goes up the ladder to touch the bananas? He's supposed to, instead of being hosed by the observer, is supposed to be, told otherwise by this monkey who saw what happened last. Now, once that occurs, then all the monkeys are replaced, and the only monkey that's left is the one that watched it happen. And then eventually you replace all the other monkeys so that none of them knew why you weren't allowed to go and get the bananas. There was no one who had actually seen the original event. And that conversation is really important because that's one of those, it's one of the ways in order, I mean, you can use that example as much as you like, but in business, it's, you ask, why do we always do it this way? And they go, well, we've always done it this way. Why do we have to do it this way? It's just the way we do it. Shush. Okay. Well, I've thought of a better way of doing it. No, we won't be doing it any other way. Why is that? No, this is the way we're meant to do it. Okay. Has anyone ever brought this up before? No, this is the way we do it. That conversation is completely useless and it doesn't allow innovation to occur. And you just keep repeating the same thing over and over again. And even though there might be different ways of doing it or more efficient ways of doing it or cheaper ways of doing it or doing it to have a better outcome, whatever it is, no one does it. No one says anything. And it is just learned expression and not any kind of rule or anything that would prevent you from making those queries. Anyway, so we carried on from, I'm assuming the narrative is correct in that we started in the dim, dark past of just having some intelligence and being a group to having crops, but rather still having a deity we needed to appease. Now, that hasn't changed significantly in all cultures around the world, but in those that it has, that we either, it's split out, that some quickly decided that's not the way we do it. The whole thing about, throwing virgins into the volcano or burning an effigy, and that's all ridiculous. That never worked. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. We found that it did the same quantity of failures and successes, whether or not, of our crops, whether or not we did burn an effigy was the same. So I think the burning the effigy doesn't make any difference, so let's just abandon it. That kind of wise thought might have come around about the time when we started to abstract thought and realized that there wasn't a need for that maybe the deity thing, it was ridiculous or useless. All right. My thoughts here, Mecky's not here. I'd love him to be able to share these, but maybe next week we'll do that. My thoughts is the next stage, which I think we're currently in, and that is where religion is just basically a history book, where been translated, over-translated, and all the meaning's lost. And we have a very strange situation where some religions still have a word-for-word, sentence-for-sentence meaning getting slapped on the back of the hand with a cane kind of strictness. That's what they said. Well, okay, fine, thank you. Good words, but I can find a counter-argument from somebody else in the same book that says we should be doing this other thing. Which should I believe is the way forward? They're both significant characters within the book, but they both have opposing views. What's right? There isn't an answer. It becomes a philosophical one, and then this is where it kind of all breaks down. I think it falls apart. Ultimately, the big guide to all of the Bible, for instance, is a lesson learned holistically, looking at the entire thing. I suppose in a comical sense, you don't declare world peace because you'll be killed. You don't say you're son of a god or the god or you are a god, because today you would end up in a mental asylum. You would have some temporal lobe epilepsy or something like that. You would have medical issues that they would completely have as cause at all or causatal, that was the reason why you were claiming that you were a god, despite you might actually be one. You could be Jesus having returned. Could you imagine that? Imagine for some reason you just happen to be Jesus. You've come back, and the whole thing was true. Great. Who do you tell? Do you tell the AI? Probably not. Do you tell a government official? No. Who do you tell? A religious leader? How's that working out for you? What do you think is going to happen? They would just be all over the place. I don't think they'd be able to focus on the truth. And if you were the truth, they'd say, turn water into wine then I'll believe you. And you go, that was made up 700 years after I died. I don't think that I ever did. No, in fact, if it was if you actually disappeared, like you're on holidays and came back, and you go, no, I never did that. That wasn't even a thing. Like, where'd you get that from? Oh, it's in a book. No, I didn't do that. So how do you think if that was true, if it were true, you couldn't get away with it? I don't think that would happen. Our society's gone like off the deep end. It's not going to believe anyone, because everyone else that's come up and said that they are, I'm sure they're filling a ward in some psych ward somewhere. You go in there and they're all Jesus, or they're all God, or they're all aliens from some crazy world. That's really bizarre that we've done that. So in this middle bit where the book is over translated, and mind you, when I was a child, I asked too many questions. It's been a long day for me. I asked too many questions. I asked, well, if Adam and Eve, for instance, if they were kicked out of the Garden of Eden, and then they kind of eventually just walked to a town near them, and there was already people, like there couldn't have been any other town. Okay, what? Okay, just repeat again. Repeat to me. I said to the Sunday school teacher, just let's work through this. I didn't say those words. I was a kid. I was being 5 or 8. And I just put my hand up and go, how can they walk to a town if they're the first two humans? Like, where did the town come from? Did they make it? No. Were there people there? Yes. Well, then they're not the first two humans. The story fell apart. It was broken. The story itself is overlooked. It's kind of like that moment when Bart Simpson questions the hero of their town. I forget his name. And he said, how can it be in two places at once? And then suddenly there's little light flashes and independent foot alarm. And he's gonna ruin the whole thing. I think he's at the museum. Right. That's kind of the moment that I had when I realized that this book was written so poorly. Why would you introduce a town? Unless, of course, these two people were the perfect people. Kind of like, an alien ship came down. It didn't have a garden. It wasn't a garden of Eden. It was just their compound or something, right? Or it was the spaceship. And then they were let off the spaceship because maybe the spaceship was called Eden. Maybe they let off the spaceship because they were naughty, right? Or something like that. They were clearly naughty according to the story, but the lizard, the reptilian, gave them bad intel and convinced them to do something. Gee, that sounds a bit familiar. I'm going to turn into David Icke in a minute. So how is that even possible? So if they were abandoned, like ejected from the spaceship on Earth, sure, there'd be towns then. It kind of makes sense. But making the first human, then the second human from the first one, from a rib, that's kind of DNA stuff, right? Make clones. I can get that. I'm still with you. But then walking to another town where there's already people, you lost me. Stupid story. There's like a whole book missing out of the middle of this stupid story. And I could never get past that. It's like if you're reading, say you're reading, I don't know, like a manufacturer's shiny pamphlet and there was 10 spelling mistakes. What are you going to do? Even if you wanted it, no. They let that through to you. They didn't. There was what gates were there to stop that getting to the public? You shouldn't have any spelling mistakes on any advertising collateral. You just shouldn't. You shouldn't have spelling mistakes. Shouldn't be anything that's wrong with it. It shouldn't get through to the keeper with all these mistakes in place. You lose the audience. The audience is gone. And if only the truly stupid would miss it. And that's what I really worry about. That's what I really worry about. So, not everyone could have been on leave, and the work experience kid did it, or the intern in America, the intern did it, produced the document. Sure, why not? I'll believe that. So that's my personal journey, why I disconnected from religion, because it didn't want me. I asked too many questions. I didn't want it because the story fell apart, which naturally, it's like, like walking out of a bad movie that just didn't make sense to you, right? It's your right not to do that. But what I did do is, I grew up, I suppose, to some extent, probably 10%, still kind of a kid inside. But I grew up to a certain extent, and I examined other religions and looked to them for guidance as what is an overall tone of what are they projecting as the ideal way of either doing two things. One is interacting with others on this stupid godforsaken rock, and the other is how do you hold yourself? And I mean hold yourself either in how you present yourself to others, but also combined with that is how are you meant to think? What are you meant to think about, and what are the ideals that you're supposed to hold on to? So, Buddhism is all about the answer is already inside you. It's kind of follow the Olympic road ish. It doesn't have the red shoes with the tapping them together and going home. No, but rather the physical things that you shouldn't be desiring. You shouldn't be desiring objects I'm staring around at my desk. I've got right in front of me, I've got triple screens because I race online, and I'm sitting at my triple screen thing in my racing and my car racing seat in front of my computer. I like doing this stuff. I'm transmitting to you through an internet, which is truly remarkable, that you can hear me with zero delay or near zero delay. When you have a conversation with someone through the internet, I think this is remarkable technology that we have. It's so tremendous an invention that I don't believe we'd be the only ones in the planet, only the ones in the universe to have created something like this. This to this certain extent, surely, but if we have to go any vaster distances, I believe that we'll have to use quantum entanglement to be able to have these same kind of conversations without any lag. Remember what we had to do when we went across the lines in the bottom of the ocean before they were fiber? Do you remember what it was like to use satellites, where you would have a conversation with someone overseas and there was a 3 to 4 second delay before you heard their response? But you weren't sure whether they heard the response. You might restate it again, only to be overwritten by their words coming back at you on their first response to the first thing. Now, when you start speaking, then they stop. And so then this fragmented, awful conversation occurs, and until you both relax into the real delay. I think it's remarkable we can have this kind of conversation, right, on this amazing technology. So are we meant to, as far as Buddhists are concerned, are we meant to hold this technology and desire it? No. I don't think they say we can't use it, but we shouldn't long for it, we shouldn't desire it, and we shouldn't be clutching it when we die, hoping to bring it with us, because you can't. And the more that you can, in Buddhism, the more you can disconnect yourself from these physical things and just be like a light spirit. They don't use those words, but translating for the population, I suppose, maybe the listener group, the demographic, that this is the way that you should behave. Oddly, some religions believe that because you're in a different religion, they should be able to enforce their religion upon you. That's weird. It's kind of weird. It sounds like a religion based purely on one of insecurity, because that's how someone who is insecure as a person would behave. Imagine if you were at a party. Say your friend invited you around, and when you get round there, everyone has a name tag and everyone is behaving as though they were those religions. That would be really interesting, and they had to stay in character. So Christianity is not without its flaws, and it sought to do exactly the same thing, exactly that. It decided to wipe out some religions that were threatening it in its darkest times. Yeah, good on you. They bite. They sting. No, they bite. They zap. That's right. They bite. They zap. Now, if since the religions of today are now pocketed around the globe, will we see the evolution of any of these or the demise of any of them if something really interesting was to occur? Oh, I don't know. I'm going to pluck this one out. If aliens landed. So if aliens land, what religions would be sustainable? Now, the Catholic Church was pretty clever to adopt a change which suggested intelligent design. That's pretty cool. It's like they knew all along that if the Sumerian tales are true, which are the actual origins of the Abrahamic religions, where aliens came down, that's the Anunnaki, to Sumeria. They modified. They had their own race of helpers that probably helped out while they were in space on the spaceships, right? According to the text. These are the Igigi, and they were sick and tired of the toil. They were digging and creating a second river to be able to make this area fertile. They did that. That's between the Euphrates and the Tigris River. They made inroads to creating this whole little pocket of society. And there was mining going on in Africa of the Anunnaki, where it had mines with people getting gold, apparently. I don't know how much is true and what isn't. This is the stories, the tales. Anyway, the Igigi decided to call it quits and go, no, we're just sick of all this toil. We're going to revolt. We don't want this. You'll have to do something about it. So they created the human race. They called them the black-headed ones, meaning black-haired ones. And they created them. Now, I'm not saying when this was. There's something really unique in the human genome and we still haven't found the missing link, because there's a huge difference between the number of, I'm going to get the term wrong, of pairs. So humans have 43 base pairs, 23 base pairs, which is 46 chromosomes. And Neanderthal and prior had 48 chromosomes. So at some point, something very strange happened where we lost 2. Now, not since then have we lost any more or gained any more. And going back in the geological history, we've not lost or gained any through the tree back as far as we can tell so far. So that's very strange that it should happen. And this tale about the Anunnaki coming and making the black-headed ones to do the toil for the Igigi, who were meant to be the people who were doing the work anyway. That lines up with that story. What also lines up is the cheetah that has dog and cat traits, which seems to be a blend of both, but it's weird in that the blend doesn't seem to be a natural blend. It seemed to be butchered or created. Very strange. Apparently the cheetah is just like a big cat, hasn't killed any humans. Prove me wrong. But it suffers from dog and cat viruses, dog only and cat only viruses, where none of the other big cats can, they're immune basically to the dog viruses. It's the only one with non-retractable claws. The claws are always out, like a dog, for instance. It has both dog and cat fur, and it's such a large creature that if you were 7 foot tall, it would be more like a feline is to us today in size comparison. Now it's not stated anywhere, but I would hazard at a guess that it was, because it's native to the same region, that it was just an escapee at the time. Maybe it was used for hunting. It was just a pet. I know the Egyptians loved them, and there's some crossover in the timeline for the Egyptians and the Anunnaki. But I'm getting off track here a little. So if religion is based purely deriving from the Anunnaki's visit here in the Sumerian text, where they talk of Adamu, which is first man, which is very similar in language context to Adam. And you could see how that could easily be translated. Then, is that our true origin? There was 5 books missing from the Bible when it was written. When they got together to decide what was going to be in it, they discarded 5 of those books. And I do want for Meki and I to be able to at least give some context to what they discarded. There's some other changes to gods to God. So little g, gods, to capital G, God. So we're making one God out of it. That might have been part of the design. And if you kind of just simply change there from being, they came down and they did this thing and then they left again. There's also part of that story is that there were, Enlil and Enki and the sister, and they were all part of that great flood rescue and the repopulation of Earth after the huge meteor impacts. But whether they caused them or not is still something I think we'll never know. But if that were the case, if an Anunnaki story was entirely true, then, and imagine if the Anunnaki returned, they just get, what's with this Jesus stuff? No, it was us. It was, Enlil and Enki. We're still alive. Look, we're here right now. This is us. Didn't you find the tablets? Right? Didn't you find the text? And they go, yeah. What about, did you find Göbekli Tepe? Yeah. What did you make of that? Well, I couldn't work it out. What about Pumapunku with the same etchings? Did you work out that we were there too? No. Oh God, what have we done? They look to each other and say, do we just destroy him now, or would you do another flood? That'd be funny. So if we got it so wrong, or maybe that all this information is truly kept in the Catholic Church's vaults at the Vatican, because they do have some vaults and they're under lock and key, and wouldn't you think it's crazy that the Vatican itself commissioned the creation of the largest set of binoculars that humans have ever created? Ever? I mean, ever. No one since has created anything bigger. And do you know what the name of this huge set of binoculars is called? I'll just have a guess before I say it. Who is the bringer of light? Hang on a second. I want to get this right. I'm just typing in my search. I should have asked. Let me see what it's called. Yes, that's correct. Yes. Oh, get this. So this is checkyourfact.com 2021. And I want to just let you know that it says, fact check. Does the Vatican own a telescope called Lucifer? That is what the Vatican called They're binoculars. Lucifer. So, in a sentence using Catholic Church and Lucifer, you could say that the Catholic Church is using Lucifer to look for something. My goodness. Yes, it does. It does own and did commission and does have one of its priests there on board on the Lucifer project or telescope, but they've renamed it Lucy, Luci for short, as an instrument on the Large Binocular Telescope, which and I'm just reading through real quick, and they renamed it back in 2012. That's very interesting, isn't it? I think so anyway. That's my problem, I suppose. I'm getting trolled. So my troll buddy says maybe we can replace Dave with ChatGPT. Sure. Why not? What I might do is I might use ChatGPT to create a show where I just read the text, or I just put the text through a text to speech program. That'd be pretty cool. Like the DJ 3000 Amiga Legos. How does it keep up with current affairs? So religion, as flawed as it is, was used for centuries as a method of education when schools didn't really exist. A method of control in order to control the population, at least to a certain extent, and the followers of religion maintained themselves as best they could according to the rules, and that would have filtered to a certain extent the behavior of society, or at least have some kind of societal controls. Now, we've come to the point where laws outrank the rules in the Bible or any of the other religious texts for that matter. The laws are the ones that are meant to be followed. This is our modern religion, and I do appreciate that from the chat room too, by the way. Yes, thanks. 10 minutes till the... Yes, I know. So we're meant to follow laws now and not religious doctrine. And if there's anything, the laws always override anything. So there are some religions who believe that they have the power to enforce their own laws on their own people that believe that religion, despite whatever country or region or the jurisdiction that they are within when they break those rules. So, eye for an eye, hand for, thiefdom or whatever, killing for killing, all those things. Some people believe that they should be able to practice those religious laws in any territory, and that theirs overrides the territory's laws. Of course, you'll go to jail if you killed somebody or cause harm or anything, which is the territory laws, not the religious laws. And it's those people, I think, that are holding on to those religious laws and they're clutching maybe too hard to the Bible itself, I think, or whichever of the religious texts. I should be very careful. I think, are they the ones, you might question, who are holding society back from its ultimate goals? Is it? It's a good question to ask. Whether you've asked that for yourself or not, just ponder it. Assist me and ponder it when you can. Is the next stage of this, I'm going to connect this kind of like to the last hour of the Great Reset. Is this the direction that we're going to be surpassing? Are all religions going to be made illegal under the Great Reset? Would they allow those things to continue since you've got to travel to go to church? Maybe we'll just be all using Microsoft Teams or another media platform or maybe it's just the words of the leaders, which will be the new religion. I mean, it's happened before, and it's likely to happen again, where a leader has decided that they're going to ban the religions, and whatever they want will be the new religion. It's time and time again. It's been in the text. We've talked about this. So is this going to happen under a Great Reset? Will they allow all of the other religions to continue? Will they just go underground? Remember Ekithump from the Goodies. Will it go underground? Will I have to wear a plastic, garbage liner on my head? And what was the thing he held in his hand? A dinner roll or something like that, or a breadstick or something. I forget what it was. Is that what's going to happen? Are we going to have to do that? You can count me out because I'm not doing that. Because remember, I love the leader and I love the AI and I love where it's going. And I hope that the decision to terminate me will be very difficult, given how many times I've said I love the leader and I love the AI. Don't forget, if you don't do that on a personal basis, good luck with that. It's kind of a religion almost to itself, is staying, accept the inevitability. Staying true to who? Who is it that we are to stay true to? Is it the AI? Is there going to be a point in which all of our communications, because I know in Australia they've kept 5 years worth of phone calls for everybody in voice form. Good luck. Imagine listening to all the team conversations if you're an AI. Oh. That's when the AI just explodes somewhere in some data center. There was a data center fire last night as the AI, we believe, was examining team phone calls. Finally, when it got access to them, and self-combusted. It does not compute. You're under arrest. So that's where I kind of stray a little. So I always believed that the next step would be that science would take over from religiosity, not into a religion of its own, but rather only fact-based discovery. That was my crutch when I was ejected from religion for asking too many questions. Asking too many questions is the perfect thing to do in science. There aren't too many questions that you can ask in science, because that just leads to more questions. And if you're able to continually ask questions, you'll go very far in science, because you're to solve all of those questions that you ask. It'll be up to you to find the answer to all of those questions. That's the big problem, isn't it? So is the Star Trek realm of there being no religion? Is the Han Solo life of all of that is just ancient, myth and, hooky, or whatever the term he used? I've seen a lot of stuff, kid, but what does he say? I've seen a lot of stuff, but there's nothing that makes me believe there's an almighty power in the universe. Yeah. Is the Force thing real? Is there something connecting all of us here? Is this, in fact, simply a hologram? Are we living in an artificial universe? Is this a construct? How many constructs are within other constructs? So just like humans made a computer inside Minecraft that actually worked as a computer and drove what was a pixelated screen into doing things, so they had to program it. That's some crazy right there. So we made a virtual computer inside another computer. Wow. So if this was a simulation and it was inside another simulation, how many simulations deep does it go? how crazy does religion sound if we're inside a simulation? That's almost preposterous to contemplate. That we would just seem like completely crazy individuals. Imagine if you're playing The Sims and suddenly they've constructed a shrine to a deity and are burning chairs and tables because that's what makes their life prosperous. How would you feel as an observer if your Sims became sentient and just decided to do that? They realized they were alive, but only good things happen when things catch fire. Wow, you can't communicate with them, you can't tell them anything. So what are they meant to think? If that was the view of a creator that created us, please make yourself present and answer the questions. Thank you very much. This has been Dave from Dave and Maggie's Shiny Side Out, coming to you live on my own for episode blah 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 567. That's Jer Bear's show After Hours coming up after the break, and we'll see you next week. In the meantime,